Hello guys, Asus Gameplays, I'm Fabio Pisco and welcome to my channel, and today I'm making a video that, well, most of you wanted to see, and I'm saying most of you because some of you don't really have interest in that, but most of you definitely did, which is FSR4 being tested in games that don't support FSR4 yet. Testing in games like Cyberpunk 2077 that definitely needs it, Black Myth Wukong where FSR is just terrible, honestly, it is just terrible. And in this video I believe that I'll try to test Palworld as well, since the game only supports the LSS. Let's see what we can get. And before starting, let me just tell you that this is only for the RX 9000 series. I tested this, and this is basically done with Optiscaler with a new nightly build where it adds the FSR4 input on top of the FSR 3.1.3 and other XSS and DLSS and so on. It basically adds the ability of using FSR4, and I tested this with the RX 7000 series cards, and they just don't work. But if you have a 9070 or a 9070 XT, you can now use FSR4 in games that still don't support it. Even games that do not support any kind of FSR 3.1, like Cyberpunk 2077, you can just go there, and with Optiscaler it works, and it works very well. So first of all, you need to go to Google and search for Optiscaler, then you open the GitHub, then you go to the releases here, then nightly builds, and you have this one, which is the Optiscaler version 0.7.7 pre-7, blah blah blah, doesn't really matter. And this is actually a version over the one that I had. This is the 311, this one is the 310, but they both work. So you just download it, you'll end up with this file here that you have, then all you have to do is copy the files, but we'll get there. But let's start, for example, with Cyberpunk 2077, and I'll show you how FSR 2.1 and 3.0 look. But before that, let's lay an eye to the sponsor because it really helps the channel. Today's video sponsor is GVG Mall, bringing you lots of software deals like Windows 10, Windows 11, Office 2019 or 2021 with a new Windows 11 design, and for all of these you can use my SKG discount code for 30% off, getting a Windows 11 serial key for $22 and a Windows 10 one for only $15. Then use the key on your Windows settings and you'll have an activated system. So we're now in Cyberpunk 2077 and we're running the Ultra settings with no kind of resolution scaling, so no upscaling, no frame generation whatsoever, just running the game normally at 1440p. Now, as you can see, even at 1440p native, the TAA implementation isn't that great, and you can see that we're having around 120 FPS. We're still kind of CPU bottlenecked since this part is really heavy on the CPU. And if you look at the ground and so on, we have lots of shimmery parts, even running natively. If you look there, we have shimmering as well. And, well, this part shouldn't really count, but we do have lots of issues even at 1440p native. If you look at the lamps, it is the same, just shimmering. Now, what we can do here, oh, my bad. What we can do here is basically go, and we can start by using Fidelity FX Super Resolution 2.1. Now, as we go into FSR 2.1, and this is without the Optiscaler mod, it is already enabled, but I'll show you. So, FSR 2.1, as soon as we look at the ground, yeah, it just looks like crap, really, just looks like crap, and we have lots of shimmer there, lots of shimmer in the ground, and I would say, or I would argue that this is kind of playable, but only to a certain extent. For example, if you look at the trees there, lots of shimmering as well, and that's really annoying, not even mentioning the ghosting here and there. And after some months, CD Projekt actually introduced AMD Fidelity FX Super Resolution 3, which is basically just the 2.2 with frame generation, FSR 2.2 in terms of upscaling plus frame generation, and to my surprise, they were able to make it worse than FSR 2.1. Yes, FSR 3, they made it worse than FSR 2.1. It kind of seems like sabotage, but anyway. And as soon as we go to FSR 3, we have less shimmering and so on because we're using Optiscaler. And very well, now we're using FSR 3.1.3, which is better than the ones that they have inside the game. And still, look at the shimmering. Yeah, look at the streets. The shimmering on the streets is worse, and the same for the lamps. And yeah, here in the palm trees it is a bit better in some parts, a bit worse in others, but yeah, the shimmering overall is worse with 3.1.3. Now, as soon as we go, and remember, we're running quality settings, as soon as we move to FSR4, I'll even move the window a bit, look at the shimmering here, now change upscaler and we go into FSR4. Bam. Even with just a modded implementation, so games or native implementations inside the game would be much better, and games that are whitelisted by AMD would be even better since they are running on the FSR 3.1 framework, while this one is just injecting the upscaling, and even just injecting the upscaling, the difference in quality is much better. So even being a mod, the quality difference is just insane. So for example, look at the street, basically no shimmering whatsoever there, no shimmering as well, so we have a little bit, and the trees, the shimmer is basically gone. So it is a massive improvement in terms of quality. Now remember the shimmering that we had. I can go to the quality settings again, so FSR 3.1.3, look, the quality is, the image is kind of smudged, so we don't really have that much clarity as we do with FSR4, and at the same time the shimmering is just insane. Now as soon as we go to FSR4, much better clarity and much better temporal stability. This is a thing, and we're having 130 something FPS now. What we can do here, since we have much better quality now, we can go, for example, and try the performance mode. Instead of the quality mode, let's try the performance mode. And as you can see, even with the performance mode, when you're looking at the ground, when you're looking at those far objects, when you're looking at the trees, we're still having way better performance, not way better performance, but way better quality than we were having with FSR 3.1.3. Even in movement, as you can see, even in movement, it is so much better, so much clearer than when using FSR 3.1.3. It just looks much better, and again, we're running the performance mode, because as soon as we go to the quality mode, again, it just looks much better, definitely much better. We still have some shimmering here and there, but that's because the framework that we have here isn't ready for FSR 3.1. So what you can do instead is, instead of using FSR in the options, because this is a good thing if you want to use frame generation together with the Optiscaler mod, but if you don't really care about frame generation, or you can use it inside Optiscaler, you can just go here and select the LSS. Because as soon as you select the LSS, you might ask, well, but I can't use the LSS on an AMD card. And it's actually bugging right now because I needed to select the CNN model. But still, you might ask, well, what's the difference? I can't use the LSS and this is a mod. Yes, if you select the LSS in-game when using Optiscaler, you'll still be using FSR 3.1.3 or FSR4. The only difference is that the inputs will be from the LSS instead of being from FSR 2.1. And what happens is that the inputs from FSR 2.1 are usually way worse than the inputs from FSR 3.1. And that's also why you need FSR 3.1 at least in order to use FSR4 inside the adrenaline settings, like for example when running some other game, like let's say Hunt Showdown, for example, Fidelity FX Super Resolution 4 works, but with the LSS, since the LSS has way better inputs in terms of motion, depth, of those vectors, of course, since that data is much better on the LSS, the image quality from FSR4 with those vectors will also get better. So again, this is FSR 3.1.3, as you see, lots of shimmering, and this is using the quality mode, and we're having around 120 FPS. Now, what many people want to know is if they can run ray tracing. So let's put ray tracing, even path tracing. Let's put path tracing, and we're running FSR 3 quality, and we're running 42 FPS. And as you can see, the quality is just really bad because, again, we're running path tracing, but still, this GPU can do a decent job with path tracing, but look at the shimmering is just insane. Now, as soon as we move from 3.1.3 to 4.0, look at the difference, the image stability is just much better. And now, since the image stability is much better, what you can simply do is go to the settings, decrease, for example, from quality to performance, and we are now upscaling from 720p. And look at this, upscaling from 720p with FSR4 is actually better generally than using FSR3 with quality mode, and this is how much better it is. We still have some ghosting here and there, but in terms of stability, it is just much better. And as you see, even without frame generation, we get around 60 FPS in this card using path tracing. So it isn't normal ray tracing, it is path tracing, which is considerably heavy. And even in movement and with FSR4, not balance, not quality, performance, and it still, well, shows a considerably good image. And if we don't really want this, if we want better things in the scenario, if you don't really want path tracing, well, you can just go, for example, let's try balanced mode, and instead of path tracing, let's just use the normal ray tracing with ray tracing lighting to ultra. And in this case scenario, our FPS are still 100, we're still getting 100 FPS, and the image quality is still quite fine. And remember, this is using ray tracing, so it is a fit for the AMD cards, and it's ray tracing ultra quality. And even if I want to go to, let's say, quality mode again, I can go to quality mode, and even in quality mode we are getting around 87 FPS in this part. And in terms of quality, take one or two things off, because once again this is using FSR3 inputs, which aren't that great, and yeah, the image quality is just very good, and we're having 89-90 FPS. Now I can go here, for example, and try the Intel XeSS inputs and see what we have here. We are still using FSR4, but the inputs are from XeSS, so in some cases like this one here, we are not having that kind of shimmering anymore, since the inputs are slightly better in most scenarios. And yeah, the image stability is just much better. If you look at the trees, if you look at everywhere, yeah, we have a much better and much more clearer image while running ray tracing without any effort. FSR4 quality mode, ray tracing running on the 9070XT, no issues whatsoever, 90 FPS, 90 something, and again, we're not even using frame generation, so yeah. And all you have to do is just do that process that I told you about, and you're good to go. Now, for example, look at the buildings. We do have shimmering on those buildings, and if we now go back to the FSR3 inputs, as you can see, the shimmer just hits differently. It depends on the inputs a lot, and that's why AMD only allows FSR4 to work with FSR 3.1 games, since the inputs are ready for that. But still, even using the XeSS 1.3 inputs, generally it just works very well, and it's a very good experience. Again, ray tracing, ultra settings, it just works here, just works. Now let's do the same process for Black Myth Wukong, one of the games that has the poorest FSR implementation that I've seen in a while. In my case, it is on Games SSD, Games, Steam Apps, Common, and then we have Black Myth Wukong. And you can't really copy the files here to the main folder. You need to go into the folder where the executable is. In this case, I believe it's B1, then binaries Win64, and yeah, here we are. Then you go to your files. Oh, my bad. Just again copy them here, done. You can replace, then Optiscaler setup, more info, run anyway, 1, and it's done. As you can see, press any key to continue, and we're good to go. For example, we're running TSR, which is considerably better than FSR in this title, and as soon as you start moving, it may be hard to see on video, but as soon as you start moving, you have lots of transparency issues around the character. So kind of halos, pixelization, not pixelization, I don't really know. But as you can see, as we start moving, if we put it in slow motion, you can see that there are lots of artifacts, and even when attacking, yeah, if you look at the head, for example, you can see pixelization, and that doesn't really look great at all, and it is still much better than FSR was. FSR was a complete pile of crap. But well, let's now go, for example, from TSR to FSR, and as soon as we go to FSR, our mod of Optiscaler should have kicked in. Now we press insert, and yeah, we're running XeSS. And when running XeSS, we're getting 94 FPS at very high settings, and as you can see, yep, in terms of transparency issues, we are much better here, and the overall quality and clarity is just much better than FSR, but still in motion, it still doesn't look that great. Now, oh, my bad. Now, if we go to the FSR 3, for example, it will apply FSR 4 already, but I will change to FSR 3.1. Firstly, as soon as I'm start the attacking, yeah, lots of pixelization around the character already. I can see it immediately as I start attacking. I don't know if you guys can see it, but I definitely can. We have also a bit of shimmering. The shimmering doesn't really appear when you're when you're sitting down, it just appears when you're moving. And if you look at the grass, for example, we do have shimmering happening, and we do have the shimmering around the halo of the character as well, which, yes, is something that we definitely don't want. Now, as soon as we go from FSR 3 to FSR4, and by the way, the version that you're seeing here, FSR 3.1.3, is already much better than the version that you have inside the game. So you can use Optiscaler even if you're using an RX 7000 series. You can use the Optiscaler just to use the FSR 3.1.3 or the XeSS mod, which is already much better than anything that FSR has to offer. But as soon as we go to FSR4 and we change the upscaler, bam, we have immediately a much better looking image. For example, if I look at the textures, even when using a mod, which is not as good as having the official implementation, I look at the textures, I have much better clarity in the textures. For example, here in the grass, as soon as I start walking, we have much better temporal stability, even with the mod, much better, way less shimmering. And as soon as I start attacking, as you can see, no more pixelization around Wukong. Bam, just a clear and sharp image, and that's really great in terms of pixelization, transparent pixels. It's just a complete new world. You can definitely play with FSR without a single issue. For example, in the water, where it was one of the parts where FSR 3.1 tended to, well, not work properly. When we're using FSR4 here, it just looks great. No issues whatsoever, just a clear image overall, with lots of quality compared to FSR 3.1. Even in the staff, for example, now you can see the staff is red, and if we move it, no pixelization whatsoever. As soon as I go back to, let's say, FSR 3.1.3, changing the upscaler, if you look at the bat, you can see some pixelization, and of course, way worse quality. Look at the hat, for example, and you can see the pixels changing because it is kind of transparent. That's what happens in most scenarios. As soon as we go back to FSR4, bam, just looks much better with much more stability. Still some disocclusion, but definitely much better. And now again, since the upscaler quality is just much better, you can simply go, let's say, instead of 50%, you can just go, for example, to 50. Instead of 65 or 66, which is the quality mode, you can just go to 50, which is the performance mode. And I can definitely, like, 100% guarantee you that FSR4 in performance mode looks much better than FSR 3.1.3 in quality mode, and like tons of times better than the official implementation of FSR that we have in this game. So when running FSR4 here, I can actually get much higher FPS, going up to 100 FPS, yeah, with no issues, while running, of course, 1440p with FSR4 performance, and still having better quality than TSR and FSR together, or even XeSS, which is just great. We have some issues when going lower like this. For example, you can see the halo, a bit of motion blur there, or disocclusion, but I guess it is what it is because we are upscaling from 720p, and still generally it just looks much better than what FSR did. I'm just blown away. So now we're running Silent Hill 2, and this is one of the parts where I like to test because, for example, look at here and look at the cabinets, and then I don't really know what this is, but it is kind of a window or something like that. And as you can see, even using native resolution, this is what we got. And because, yeah, this is 1440p native, that's why we're running 69 FPS. As you can see, for example, oh, sorry about this. As you can see, 1440p full screen, and in terms of super sampling, none. We're not using anything, and look at this. The amount of shimmering is just crazy. Now let's try some super sampling with TSR, with a normal quality. Let's see the normal quality. And as you can see, it kind of stops it a bit, and we have more FPS, 76, but still, the shimmering is there, and it is far from perfect, and the image is kind of blurred out in most scenarios, so it is not optimal at all. As soon as we go to, let's try FSR 3.1, quality mode, As soon as we go to FSR 3.1 quality mode, what happens is that when I go to insert, we're running XeSS. And as you can see, XeSS isn't, that great here either. So let's run FSR 3, but again, let's see, FSR 3.1 first, and it looks bad, so bad. And even in terms of the quality here, you can see that things aren't, well, we have more shimmering, of course, and just the clarity, I can see it, because if I can see it, I believe that you can see it as well, but with YouTube's compression and so on, maybe that's not the case. But as soon as I change to FSR4, the clarity of the textures is just much better. But we still have that issue, and that issue usually happens because of the inputs. Because as soon as I go here, and I go from the FSR 3.1 inputs to the DLSS inputs, because it works in this game, I just go back, bam, and look at it, yep, and we're still using FSR4. We're still using FSR4, but we're using DLSS inputs, which are much better in this game. And look at this, no more shimmering there, just functioning perfectly fine. And even if we look at the cabinets, we do have some shimmer here and there, but very little. And we went from 60 something FPS to 85. So generally, comparing to the native resolution or the native rendering in this particular part, the FSR4 and DLSS are just working much better. Using DLSS entries, DLSS depth, motion vectors, and a color as well, to use it with FSR4, and it just looks much better. Definitely better than native, and much better than the earlier version of FSR, because even with DLSS inputs, we can go to FSR 3.1. And if we go to FSR 3.1 with DLSS inputs, it just looks bad. Look at it. Just looks bad. But as soon as we go to FSR4, bam, better clarity, much more temporal stability. And by the way, if you're having issues when using the upscaler from Optiscaler and frame generation inside the game, if things aren't working as they should, you can also use the frame generation from Optiscaler, and it just works. It just injects the frame generation. For example, we're having 88, I just go FG active, and I immediately went to 164. I can also use the allow async computing, and the performance should be better in this case scenario as well, and we're still using FSR4. One of the things that happens is that, and by the way, it works very well. It works very well, and even the latency isn't bad. One of the things that usually happens is that in terms of the HUD, as you can see, we have issues, but these are of course due to the frame generation. What you can do is just go here, FG HUD fix, no more issues whatsoever. We might have a bit of tearing here and there, but generally, just works great. I can just go here, open it, go to the specific part, and it will work. And if you just don't want FG anymore, just deactivate it. We're still having 100 FPS, very good quality, as you can see. Basically no shimmer whatsoever. The quality is just fine. Bam, 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 bam. And guys, that's basically what it is. And if you just want more FPS, since we're now using FSR4 and FSR4 is much superior to FSR 3.1, what you can just do is, instead of using, of course, the quality mode again, you can just go and use the balanced mode, and it will still look way better than the quality mode with FSR 3.1. And we're now having 120 FPS in Silent Hill 2. And it just works. Really, I am blown away by the easy process that using Optiscaler is. It's just really easy. Of course, there are some games that don't really work. I tried some of them and they didn't work, but these games like Robocop, Cyberpunk, Black Myth Wukong, Silent Hill 2, and some others that I tested also worked, and it's just so much better. It's just very easy to use, and it's so much better quality wise than what we have officially. That is just that it just blows my mind. All you have to do is download Optiscaler, copy the files to the games folder, just run that Optiscaler bot, and you're good to go. Inside the game, use FSR or DLSS, then press the insert key and select the upscaler and the version of the upscaler that you want, in this case 4.0, and you're good to go. Really good, believe me. Easy and very good. And well guys, that's all for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share this video, and see you in the next one, guys.